This tutorial is for 4th grade, Module 5, Lesson 30. In this lesson, we're going to add mixed numbers and fractions. To start with, we'll use a number line to model this addition. The first problem is 3 1/4 plus 1/4. I'm going to start by finding 3 1/4 on the number line. Since I have 3 holes, I'll start at the 3-hole marker, and then I just need to jump 1/4 past that. So here's my starting point. 3 1/4. To that, I will add another fourth, so that just means a hop of 1 more fourth, and that puts me at 3 2/4. So 3 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 3 2/4. Let's look at problem B. Here I have 7 3/4 plus 1/4. I'll start again by finding 7 3/4 on the number line. Start at the 7 holes and then move over 3/4, which puts me at this point. From there, I'm going to add or hop 1 more fourth. Now I could say that I landed at 7 4/4, but if you notice, when we added that fourth, it actually took me to 8 holes. So instead of showing the fraction as 7 4/4, I'm going to put my sum as 8 holes. This is something we want the students to do when they're adding. If that fraction makes a whole or makes more than a whole, we need to decompose that into the whole to create our final sum. Here's another example of that process. This problem is 6 7/8 plus 1/8. I'll start at the 6 and move over 7/8 to find my starting point. Here's my 6 7/8 point, and I'm going to add 1/8 to it. That's just one little hop there. And I could say that I landed on 6 8/8, but again, that 8/8 made one more hole. So my final answer is 7 holes. Now let's think about that when we fill in the blanks in part 2. Question A says 4 7/8 plus something equals 5 holes. When I'm at 4 7/8 on the number line, I'm 1/8 away from making the next hole. 4 7/8 plus 1/8 would equal 4 8/8, and that 8/8 is what takes me to the 5 holes. Going across, I have 7 2/5. And I need to add something to it that would get me to the 8 holes. Well, if it takes 5/5 to make a hole, and I have 2/5, that means I need 3 more fifths to get me to 8 holes. In question C, I need 3 holes. I have 2 1/6. Since it takes 6/6 to make a hole, I know I need 5 more sixths to get me to the 3-hole point on the number line. And in question D, I need 12 holes. I have 11 1/12. Well, it takes 12/12 to make a hole. I only have 1/12. That means I need 11 more 12ths to get me to that 12 point on the number line. We'll use that same logic to think through these problems. In problem A, I have 2 3/4. To that, I'm going to add 2/4. I know since I'm at 2 3/4, it'll take 1 more fourth to get me to 3 holes. So that's why we have decomposed the 2/4 into 1/4 and 1/4. Now I can combine the 3/4 and the 1/4 to make another whole. That gives me 3 in all, and the 1/4 is my leftover fraction. If I look at problem B, I'm adding 3 3/5 plus another 3/5. Well, if I'm at 3/5, it's going to take 2 more fifths to make a whole, since it takes 5/5 in all. So I'm going to decompose the 3/5 into 2/5 and 1/5. That way I can combine the 3/5 and the 2/5 to make a whole. Now I have 4 holes in all, and I have 1/5 left over. 3 3/5 plus 3/5 equals 4 1/5. By thinking about what gets me to the next hole, I can work through these problems by creating those whole numbers by decomposing the number that I'm adding.